I'm Vanessa, and on my 23rd birthday, I woke up excited, expecting balloons, cake, and warm wishes. Instead, my parents barged in carrying a suitcase. Happy birthday. You're on your own, they announced coldly.
No cake.
Just a packed bag and a document they forced me to sign. Tears blurred my vision as I scribbled my name, not knowing what I was surrendering. I never imagined my birthday candles would be replaced by the headlights of my car as I drove away from everything I'd ever known, but that signature would change everything. Where are you watching from today? I'd love to know in the comments. While you're sharing, please hit that like button and subscribe to support my channel. This story about family betrayal, resilience, and unexpected triumph might just change how you think about loyalty and second chances. Growing up in Maple Ridge Estates, our colonial-style house with its manicured lawn and three-car garage screamed upper-middle-class suburban perfection. My parents, Emily and Richard Thompson, made sure our family projected success at every turn. Dad worked as a senior investment banker and Mom ran a boutique real estate firm specializing in luxury properties. From the outside, we had it all. But inside those pristine walls, perfection came with a crushing price. My parents operated our household like a corporation where performance reviews happened daily and falling short meant consequences. As the firstborn, I inherited impossible expectations. Every report card needed straight A's. Every recital demanded flawless execution. Every competition required first-place trophies. Vanessa, the Thompsons don't settle for mediocrity. My father would lecture while reviewing my semester grades. Even a single A- earned me a week of disappointed glances and passive-aggressive comments about applying myself. My younger sister Heather, however, somehow escaped this pressure cooker. 3 years my junior, she received praise for the very B grades that earned me silent treatment. When she abandoned violin lessons after just 6 months, my parents nodded understandingly about finding her path. When I suggested switching from debate team to art club in 10th grade, Dad slammed his fist on the dining table so hard the china rattled. Art doesn't build character, he declared. Art doesn't secure futures. The disparity in our treatment created a toxic dynamic between us sisters. Heather learned to weaponize our parents' favoritism, smirking behind their backs when I received criticism. She'd casually mention my smallest mistakes at dinner, knowing it would trigger another lecture. Vanessa got paint on her jacket today, she'd say innocently. Didn't you say that artists can't afford to be careless, Dad? Despite their control, I cultivated my passion for art in secret. Late nights after homework, I sketched under desk lamps. During lunch breaks, I haunted the school art studio. My art teacher, Mrs. Lawson, recognized something in my work and encouraged me to apply to art programs. When acceptance letters arrived from several universities, including a partial scholarship to the prestigious Westlake Institute of Fine Arts, I finally found the courage to confront my parents. The argument lasted 3 days. Mom cried about wasted potential. Dad calculated the earnings difference between business and art careers on spreadsheets he slid under my door. Heather watched wide-eyed from staircases and hallways as screaming matches erupted at breakfast, dinner, and late into the night. We refuse to pay for you to pursue poverty, Dad finally declared. But something had shifted in me. For once, I stood firm. Then I'll pay my own way. And I did. Through student loans, part-time jobs, and that partial scholarship, I graduated 4 years later with a Bachelor of Fine Arts, specializing in mixed media and digital art. The graduation ceremony stung. My parents attended but sat stone-faced, clapping mechanically when my name was called. Heather didn't come at all, claiming a scheduling conflict with her sorority. After graduation, financial reality forced me to move back home temporarily. Dad insisted I pay rent, which I managed through freelance graphic design gigs while applying for gallery positions and creative jobs. Every dinner became a battlefield. Thompson Investments has an entry-level marketing position, Dad would begin. Starting salary is reasonable and there's potential for advancement. Mom preferred settler tactics. Leslie Wilson's daughter just bought a condo with her signing bonus from that accounting firm. Isn't she younger than you, Vanessa? Meanwhile, Heather, now a business major at Dad's alma mater, enjoyed rent-free living during her breaks, plus a new car for making sensible choices. The unfairness burned, but I believed blood meant something. Family might disapprove of my choices, but surely they wouldn't abandon me entirely. 3 weeks before my 23rd birthday, tensions escalated. I'd landed a modest commission designing promotional materials for a local arts festival, my first significant professional accomplishment. Instead of celebration, Dad issued an ultimatum during Sunday dinner. You have until the end of the month to find a real job with benefits and career prospects, or you need to find other living arrangements. I thought he was bluffing, another pressure tactic to force my compliance. Even when Mom started making pointed comments about cleaning out space in the house, I dismissed it as manipulation. Heather's knowing smiles should have warned me, but I remained naively confident that my birthday would reset the hostilities. After all, birthdays had always been sacred in our family, the one day when expectations temporarily lifted. How catastrophically wrong I was. My 23rd birthday dawned bright, with late spring sunshine filtering through my curtains. For a moment, wrapped in the familiar comfort of my childhood bedroom, everything felt normal. Special, even. I stretched and smiled, allowing myself the luxury of birthday optimism. Despite recent tensions, birthdays had always meant temporary ceasefires in the Thompson household. Tradition dictated chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast, thoughtful gifts, and dinner at my restaurant of choice. I pulled on my favorite sweater and ran a brush through my hair, noting the clock read 9:17 a.m. Unusual silence permeated the house. No breakfast smells, no coffee machine gurgling, no morning news from the kitchen television. Perhaps they were planning a surprise? The sudden sharp knock on my bedroom door startled me. Before I could answer, it swung open. Mom and Dad entered with synchronized precision, their faces set in identical masks of determination. Dad carried a large suitcase, my suitcase, while Mom clutched a manila envelope. Heather hovered in the hallway behind them, her expression a conflicted mixture of triumph and discomfort. "Happy birthday, Vanessa," Dad said, his voice businesslike. "You're on your own now." I laughed nervously, waiting for the punchline. "Very funny. Where are the pancakes?" "This isn't a joke," Mom replied, placing the envelope on my desk. "We've been more than patient, but you've made your choices clear." Dad set the suitcase on the floor with a heavy thud. "We've packed your essentials. You have 2 hours to gather anything else you need." The room seemed to tilt sideways as their words registered. "You're kicking me out? Today? On my birthday?" "Age is just a number," Dad said coldly. "And 23 is old enough to face the consequences of your decisions." Mom opened the envelope, extracting a document. "Before you leave, you need to sign this. It's a formal acknowledgement that you're choosing to pursue your own path, independent of family support." "What exactly am I signing?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Just legal formalities," Dad waved dismissively. "It confirms you understand you're forfeiting certain family privileges by refusing to meet our reasonable expectations." Mom thrust a pen toward me. "Sign at the bottom. We've marked the spot with an X." I scanned the document, but the legal terminology blurred through my tears. Phrases like "hereby relinquish" and "in perpetuity" jumped out, but in my shocked state, their significance didn't register. "I don't understand what this means," I protested. "It means you're making your choice official," Dad said. "You want independence? This makes it official. Sign it, or we'll have to reconsider financial support we've already provided for your education." "You didn't pay for my education," I countered. "Cosign loans," Dad replied smugly. "Technically, we could call them due immediately if we withdrew our backing." The pen felt impossibly heavy in my hand. My fingers trembled as I lowered it to the paper, the blue ink bleeding slightly where a tear had fallen. I signed my name, the same name they had given me 23 years ago today. From the doorway, Heather finally spoke. "It's for the best, Van. You never really fit the family plan anyway." Mom took the signed paper, folded it carefully, and returned it to the envelope. "Your phone can stay on our family plan until the end of the month. Your health insurance coverage ends today. We've been generous enough to pay this month's premium. Check the dresser drawers and closet for anything else you want to take," Dad instructed, his tone suggesting he was discussing a hotel checkout rather than expelling his daughter. "We'll be donating whatever you leave behind." They turned to leave, but I found my voice. "Why today? Why my birthday of all days?" Mom paused at the threshold. "Symbolic fresh starts are important, Vanessa. Consider it your rebirth into adulthood. Left alone, I sank onto my bed, the reality crushing down on me. Through the window, I watched neighbors walking dogs and children playing, normal life continuing while mine imploded. After 10 minutes of stunned immobility, survival instinct kicked in. I moved mechanically, gathering art supplies, portfolio pieces, important documents, and clothing. Each item required painful prioritization. What does one pack when leaving forever? My hands lingered on childhood mementos, soccer trophies, yearbooks, the stuffed rabbit I'd slept with until 6th grade. Space constraints forced impossible choices. Halfway through packing, Heather appeared, leaning against my doorframe. "They're giving me your room," she said. "Going to convert mine into Dad's home office." "They've been planning this," I realized aloud. She shrugged. "Since your graduation. They hoped you'd cave and join Dad's company." "And you? Did you hope that too?" Her eyes dropped. "It's easier when you comply, Van." "Easier isn't always right," I said, carefully wrapping a ceramic sculpture, my first college art prize, in a sweater. "Maybe not, but easier keeps a roof over your head." She hesitated, then withdrew a $50 bill from her pocket. "Happy birthday." Gas money. The gesture, pathetically inadequate, yet the only kindness offered that day, broke something in me. Tears flowed freely as I continued packing, no longer caring that Heather witnessed my breakdown. By 11:30 a.m., my Honda Civic was loaded. 16 years of bedroom occupancy distilled into what would fit in a compact car. Mom and Dad stood in the foyer as I carried out the last bag. "Your key," Dad said, extending his palm. I dropped my house key into his hand, the metal warm from being clutched in my fist. You know, most parents would be proud of a daughter following her passion and working hard despite obstacles. Most daughters would respect their parents' wisdom, Mom countered. When your artistic fantasy collapses, don't come looking for rescue, Dad added. You've made your bed. Mrs. Kavinsky from next door was watering flowers, pretending not to watch the scene unfolding. She'd attended my kindergarten graduation, brought soup when I had mono in 9th grade, and given me birthday cards every year since I was 5. The shame of her witnessing my exile burned hot in my cheeks. I climbed into my car, the leather seats scorching in the midday sun. Through the windshield, I looked at the house where I'd grown up, the bay window where I'd read books on rainy days, the oak tree I'd fallen from and broken my arm at age 10, the driveway where I'd learned to ride a bike. As I turned the key in the ignition, Heather rushed out, something clutched in her hand. Wait, she called, reaching through the open window. You forgot this. She handed me a framed photo of the 4 of us from a beach vacation years ago, all smiling, sunburned, and seemingly happy. Before expectations corroded everything. Why are you giving me this? I asked. So you remember we weren't always like this, she whispered. I placed the photo on the passenger seat and backed out of the driveway without another word. In the rearview mirror, my parents stood like sentinels at the front door, already turning to go inside before I reached the end of the street. Heather remained on the lawn, a diminishing figure growing smaller as I drove away. My childhood ended not with graduation or some profound milestone, but with the sound of my own tires on asphalt, carrying me away from everything familiar on the very day I should have been celebrating another year of life. The first night of homelessness, because that's what I was, technically, I spent in the Bluebird Motel off Highway 16, a place that advertised weekly rates and free HBO. The room smelled of industrial cleaner barely masking decades of cigarette smoke. When I called to book it, the clerk hadn't asked why a young woman needed a room on such short notice, just whether I preferred first or second floor. Small mercies. I paid for 3 nights with the birthday check my grandmother Clara had mailed the previous week, $200 that was supposed to buy new art supplies now allocated to basic survival. After tipping the front desk clerk an extra $5, I carried my suitcases upstairs and sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, finally allowing reality to sink in. My phone buzzed with birthday wishes from friends unaware of my situation. Each cheerful message twisted the knife deeper. How do you respond to "hope you're having the best day ever" when you've just been disowned? Eventually, I called Madison, my closest friend from college. We'd bonded during freshman orientation and remained tight despite her moving toward commercial photography, while I pursued fine arts. They did what? she exclaimed after I explained my situation. On your actual birthday? That's sociopathic. I think the birthday timing was intentional, I said, picking at a loose thread on the motel bedspread. Maximum impact. You're staying with me? Madison declared. My roommate's visiting her parents for 2 weeks. That gives us time to figure something out. Relief washed over me. Mads, I can't even. Don't even start. Just get your butt over here tomorrow. We're having birthday cake and tequila shots, and then we're plotting your revenge. Madison's one-bedroom apartment in the Arts District was cramped but welcoming. Her living room futon became my temporary bed, my suitcases stacked neatly in the corner. For 10 days, I tried to be the perfect guest. Cooking dinner, cleaning obsessively, staying quiet during her early morning photo shoots. Van, you're not a house guest, you're a refugee, Madison finally said, confiscating the sponge I was using to scrub her already clean bathtub. Stop stress cleaning and start job hunting. Finding work proved harder than expected. My freelance graphic design portfolio was decent, but not extensive. Art galleries wanted experience I didn't have. Coffee shops and retail stores were fully staffed with college students on summer break. My degree that had caused so much family strife now seemed useless in the real world. I called my grandparents, hoping they might offer temporary sanctuary, only to discover my parents had already contacted them with their version of events. Your father says you've rejected family values, Grandpa Walter said gruffly. Says you refused reasonable expectations. That's not what happened, I protested. We're too old for drama, Vanessa, he sighed. Your parents know what's best. Even my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, usually the family rebel, declined to get involved. Family disputes are complicated, she said vaguely. I'm sure once you apologize. Apologize? I interrupted. For what? Following my passion? They kicked me out on my birthday. There are always two sides, she murmured before making an excuse to end the call. By day 14 of homelessness, Madison's roommate was returning, my motel money was gone, and I had exactly $73.42 in my checking account. The practical challenges mounted. Where to shower, how to wash clothes, where to store the art supplies and portfolio pieces essential to my career but useless for immediate survival. I began selling non-essential possessions on marketplace apps. My vintage record collection, accumulated over years of birthday and Christmas gifts, went first, $185 for 37 albums. My barely used hiking boots fetched $60. The designer handbag Mom had given me for high school graduation brought $95, though it cost her 10 times that amount. Sleep became a luxury as anxiety gnawed constantly. When I did sleep, nightmares of endless packing and driving plagued me. I lost 7 pounds in 3 weeks from skipping meals to save money. My skin broke out from stress. My hair dulled from cheap motel shampoo. The humiliation of explaining my situation became its own special torture. People reacted with either pity or suspicious curiosity. What had I done to deserve such treatment? Surely normal parents wouldn't discard a child without cause? The unstated implication, this must be partially my fault. Desperate, I took a job waitressing at Denny's despite the manager's visible skepticism about my lack of experience. Art degree, huh, he said, scanning my resume. Well, I guess you can handle ketchup bottles. The hours were brutal, the pay barely sufficient, and the uniform synthetic polyester that left me sweaty and itching. Between waitressing shifts, I haunted the library for free internet, applying for every remotely creative position available. 97 applications yielded 3 interviews and 0 offers. Each rejection email cited the same issue: seeking candidates with more experience. How to get experience when no one will hire you without experience? Madison let me use her address for job applications and mail, storing a growing pile of credit card offers and alumni donation requests. 29 days after being kicked out, a different kind of envelope arrived. Heavy cream stationery with Harrington, Phillips and Associates, attorneys at law, embossed in the corner. Lawyers? Madison frowned, handing me the envelope. Are your parents suing you now? Wouldn't surprise me, I muttered, tearing it open. The letter inside requested my presence at the offices of Theodore Harrington regarding matters pertaining to the Thompson Family Trust and recent legal documents. My stomach dropped. What new horror was this? That same evening, scrolling through social media during my dinner break at Denny's, I saw Heather had posted photos from a family dinner at Giovanni's, the restaurant where we traditionally celebrated birthdays. My mother wore a new pearl necklace. My father beamed with his arm around Heather. The caption read, "Celebrating my summer internship. #blessed, #family support." I locked myself in the employee bathroom and sobbed until my manager knocked, asking if I was sick. Food poisoning. I lied, splashing cold water on my face before returning to serve mozzarella sticks and chocolate shakes with a synthetic smile. The next morning, a small miracle occurred. Olivia Chun, the owner of Brushstrokes Gallery downtown, responded to my 7th follow-up email about entry-level positions. "No openings currently," she wrote, "but I need help with digital catalog design for our summer exhibition. Freelance, 2-week project, $800 flat fee. Interested?" I nearly dropped my phone in excitement, fingers trembling as I composed a professional acceptance that masked my desperate gratitude. The project wasn't much, but it was art-adjacent work that might lead to connections. More importantly, it was enough money to avoid sleeping in my car while I figured out next steps. For the first time since my birthday catastrophe, I felt a tiny spark of hope, not enough to warm me completely, but enough to suggest that perhaps, just perhaps, I could survive this after all. The offices of Harrington, Phillips and Associates occupied the 12th floor of a downtown high-rise, all gleaming marble, leather furniture, and hushed conversations. I felt acutely out of place in my thrift store blazer and scuffed flats, clutching my pleather portfolio case like a shield. "Vanessa Thompson for Mr. Harrington," I told the receptionist, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. She smiled professionally. "Mr. Harrington is in court today. Mr. Brandon Sullivan will be handling your matter. Please have a seat." 10 anxious minutes later, a young man in a charcoal suit appeared. "Miss Thompson? I'm Brandon Sullivan, associate attorney here." His handshake was firm but not aggressive, his expression kind rather than condescending. He led me to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Water? Coffee," he offered. "Water, please," I croaked, my throat suddenly parched. Brandon placed a folder on the table between us. "I handle most of Theodore Harrington's trust and estate matters," he explained. "Your grandmother Clara Thompson's trust falls under my purview." "My grandmother?" I frowned. I thought this was about something my parents had me sign. "It is," he confirmed, opening the folder. "Specifically, this document." He slid a paper across the table, the very document I'd signed on my birthday. Seeing it again made my stomach clench. "Do you recall signing this?" Brandon asked carefully. "On my birthday," I nodded. "Right before my parents kicked me out. They said it was just formalizing my independence." Brandon's expression darkened. "What they had you sign was considerably more significant. This is a formal renunciation of inheritance rights, specifically, your rights to the Clara Thompson Educational and Artistic Development Trust." "The what?" "Your grandmother established a trust 12 years ago, specifically designated for your education and artistic pursuits. Approximately $1 million in assets, primarily invested in a diversified portfolio." The room seemed to spin. $1 million? For me? That's impossible. "Not only possible but legally executed," Brandon continued. "Your grandmother was quite specific that these funds were to support your artistic education and career establishment. But my student loans were unnecessary," he finished. "According to our records, your parents never accessed the educational portion of the trust, despite being informed of its existence when you turned 18. Nausea washed over me as pieces clicked into place. My parents had deliberately hidden my inheritance while forcing me to take out loans. Then, when that didn't derail my artistic ambitions, they tricked me into signing away my rights entirely." "Can they do that?" I whispered. Brandon adjusted his glasses. "That's where things get interesting. Normally, a signed renunciation is binding. However, there are exceptions when signatures are obtained under duress or through material misrepresentation." "They definitely misrepresented what I was signing," I said bitterly. "Furthermore," Brandon continued, "the trustee, your grandmother, must be notified of any renunciation. Our office only received this document yesterday, nearly a month after you signed it. Does my grandmother know what's happening?" "Not yet." Mr. Harrington was planning to contact her, but I thought speaking with you first might be prudent. He hesitated. Miss Thompson, when's the last time you spoke with your grandmother? Christmas, briefly. My parents usually monitor our interactions. Brandon nodded, as if this confirmed a suspicion. There's something else you should see. He withdrew another document from the folder, a letter in familiar handwriting. This was attached to the original trust document, he explained, passing it to me. The letterhead bore my grandmother's name and address. The content made my eyes sting with tears. My dearest Vanessa, asterisk. When you were 7 years old, you showed me a crayon drawing of our family. While others saw childish scribbles, I recognized genuine talent and perspective. You captured your father's stern posture and your mother's distant gaze with remarkable insight for one so young. Asterisk. I've watched your artistic gift bloom despite environments designed to stifle it. I established this trust to ensure that regardless of others' expectations, you'll have the means to pursue your unique vision. Asterisk. Your grandfather and I built our fortune through hard work and sacrifice. Richard believes wealth should cascade through generations in prescribed ways. I disagree. Money's true purpose is enabling potential, not enforcing conformity. Asterisk. This fund is yours alone. Neither your parents nor sister can access it. It remains your safety net and launching pad, available when you're ready to spread your wings. Asterisk. Create boldly, Vanessa. I'll be watching with pride, even when I can no longer tell you so in person. Asterisk. With love and faith in your journey. Asterisk. Grandma Clara, asterisk. I looked up, vision blurred. She believed in me. Evidently, Brandon agreed. And she anticipated potential complications. Complications like my parents trying to steal my inheritance. The trust does contain unusual protective language, he acknowledged. Mrs. Thompson clearly wanted these assets shielded from external influence. So, what happens now? I asked, wiping my eyes. That depends on you, Brandon said. We can file to invalidate the renunciation based on several procedural violations. The signature was obtained under duress. You weren't properly informed of what you were signing, and the renunciation wasn't promptly delivered to the trustee as required by law. Hope flickered. You think we could win? More than win. Brandon leaned forward. The improper handling of this matter raises serious questions about your parents' actions as secondary trustees. If they attempted to redirect these funds to other purposes. To my sister, I interrupted. They've always favored her. That would constitute breach of fiduciary duty, he said gravely. Potentially even fraud. What do I need to do? Brandon slid a legal pad toward me. Start by writing down everything that happened on your birthday. Every detail you remember about the signing, who was present, what was said, any pressure applied. Then we'll need documentation of your subsequent housing situation to establish the immediate consequences. For the next hour, I poured out the humiliating details of my birthday expulsion and subsequent struggles. Brandon listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but never expressing the judgment or pity I'd come to expect. When I finished, he gathered the pages. This is compelling, Miss Thompson. With your permission, I'll draft counterfilings immediately. What about my grandmother? Will she be notified? As trustee, she'll need to be informed of these proceedings, he confirmed. Fear gripped me. My parents might retaliate against her. They visit weekly, handle her finances. Actually, Brandon interrupted, your grandmother changed her primary financial advisors 3 months ago. She transferred management of her personal accounts to our firm, separate from the family business interests. This revelation stunned me. Grandmother Clara had always appeared compliant with my father's financial directives. Had she been quietly preparing for this conflict? There's something else you should know, Brandon added, his professional tone softening slightly. The trust contains an advance provision, funds that can be released immediately for emergency situations. Housing instability would qualify. How much? I asked, hardly daring to hope.
$22,000.
Enough for temporary accommodations, basic necessities, and breathing room while we resolve the larger issues. Tears spilled over. After weeks of counting pennies and skipping meals, the thought of financial security, even temporary, overwhelmed me. Brandon discreetly pushed a box of tissues across the table. It's just your money returning to you, Miss Thompson. money that was always intended for your benefit. As he processed the emergency distribution paperwork, I stared out the window at the city below, the same city that had seemed so hostile just hours earlier. The signature that my parents had weaponized against me might ultimately become their undoing. For the first time since being expelled from my childhood home, I felt more than just hope. I felt the beginning of justice. The emergency funds arrived in my newly opened bank account 2 days later. $20,000, a fortune compared to the $124.57 I'd had before, yet merely a fraction of what had apparently been mine all along. Still, it represented something precious. Options. My first priority was stable housing. After weeks of couch surfing and motel hopping, I craved a space to call my own, however modest. Through a rental agency specializing in artist-friendly properties, I found a studio apartment in an old converted textile factory on the east side. At 450 square feet, it was basically a rectangular box with high ceilings, concrete floors, and industrial windows, and it was perfect. "It's not much," apologized Carlos, the building superintendent, as he unlocked the door for the first time. "But the light is good for artists." North-facing windows. Indeed, afternoon sunlight streamed through tall, factory-style windows, casting geometric patterns across the empty space. A small kitchenette occupied one corner, a bathroom barely bigger than an airplane lavatory another. But the walls were clean, the utilities worked, and most importantly, it was mine. "First month, last month, security deposit," I recited, handing Carlos a cashier's check that represented nearly a quarter of my emergency funds. "When can I move in?" "It's yours now," he said, passing me the keys. "Welcome home, Vanessa." Home. The word caught in my throat. Carlos proved to be more than just a superintendent. A retired construction worker with 2 artist daughters of his own, he took a fatherly interest in my situation. He helped me navigate the building's quirks, which shared laundry machines worked best, how to adjust the temperamental water heater, which local takeout delivered fastest. "You need furniture," he observed 3 days after I moved in with just my suitcases and art supplies. "My cousin Miguel owns a second-hand shop. Good quality, fair prices, no bedbugs." Through Miguel's shop, I acquired the basics: a futon that converted to a bed, a wobbly dining table with 2 mismatched chairs, a lamp with a slightly crooked shade, and a dresser, missing 1 drawer pull. None of it matched, none of it was what I would have chosen with unlimited funds, but arranging these imperfect pieces in my imperfect space gave me an unexpected sense of accomplishment. With a stable address, I could finally focus on rebuilding my career. The digital catalog project for Brushstrokes Gallery became my lifeline, not just financially, but professionally. I threw myself into the work, determined to make it exceptional. When Olivia expressed concern about my working conditions, "You're designing this on a laptop balanced on your knees?" I assured her I had everything I needed. "You have talent," she told me when I delivered the completed catalog 3 days ahead of schedule. Raw, but undeniable. "Are you looking for regular work?" The gallery couldn't afford a full-time designer, but Olivia offered me a part-time position managing their social media and creating promotional materials. 20 hours weekly at just above minimum wage. It wasn't financial security, but it was steady income doing something adjacent to my field. "Plus," she added, "you can use the back-office computer for your freelance work when we're closed Mondays. Better than your knee desk setup." Through Olivia, I met Kyle Hernandez, a web developer who specialized in portfolio sites for artists. "Your online presence is prehistoric," he declared after viewing my basic portfolio page. "No wonder you're struggling to get commissions." "I can't afford professional web design," I admitted. Kyle grinned. "Trade? I need artwork for my apartment that doesn't come from IKEA. You need a website that doesn't scream, 'I just learned HTML.'" Our skills exchange blossomed into friendship. Kyle introduced me to local networking events for creative professionals, dragging me to gallery openings and design meetups. "Talent is worthless without connections," he insisted. "And connections happen face-to-face." At one such event, I met Dr. Stephanie Wong, a therapist who specialized in family trauma. After hearing snippets of my story, she handed me her card. "I offer sliding scale sessions for artists," she said quietly. "Family rejection leaves wounds that fester, if not treated." Initially, I resisted. Therapy seemed like an unnecessary luxury when I was still building financial stability. But after waking from yet another nightmare about my birthday expulsion, this time with my parents literally setting fire to my belongings, I finally called. Dr. Wong's office became a sanctuary where I could unpack decades of conditional love and emotional manipulation. Your parents' weaponized approval, she explained during our third session, made it contingent on compliance with their vision rather than support for yours. Is that why I still check my phone hoping I'll call? I asked. Even after everything they did? That's the child in you seeking what every child deserves. Unconditional love, she nodded. Grief for the parents you deserved but didn't get is a necessary part of healing. These weekly sessions slowly helped me recognize the dysfunctional patterns I'd normalized. How I apologized excessively for minor inconveniences. How I anticipated criticism before it came. How I discounted compliments while absorbing every negative comment. While rebuilding professionally and emotionally, I maintained radio silence with my family. No calls, no texts, no social media interactions. Brandon advised minimal contact during the legal proceedings, but truthfully, the separation provided clarity I desperately needed. 1 month turned into 2, then 3. Summer cooled into autumn. My studio apartment slowly transformed from an empty box into a personalized space. I hung thrift store curtains, arranged potted plants along the windowsills, and created a dedicated work area with a proper desk salvaged from a university surplus sale. My first significant commission came through Kyle's connections, designing a mural for a new pediatric dental office. The project paid enough to purchase a proper drafting table and professional-grade supplies. Photos of the completed mural, featuring whimsical animals demonstrating proper brushing techniques, attracted attention online, leading to 2 more commercial art jobs. With each small success, my confidence grew. The girl who had driven away from her childhood home with tears blurring her vision was evolving into a woman who could support herself through her art. Exactly what my parents had insisted was impossible. 5 months after my birthday exile, an unexpected visitor knocked on my studio door. Carlos called up from the security entrance. Vanessa, elderly lady here says she's your grandmother. Clara Thompson. Should I send her up? My heart raced. Yes, please. Grandmother Clara had always been a commanding presence despite her small stature. At 78, she still dyed her hair chestnut brown, wore tailored pantsuits, and applied her signature coral lipstick with precision. Seeing her standing in my humble studio doorway, designer handbag over one arm, felt surreal. Well, she said, surveying my space, it's small, but it has excellent light. Grandma, I whispered, frozen in place. How did you find me? Brandon Sullivan isn't the only one who can hire a private investigator, she replied crisply. May I come in, or shall we conduct this reunion in the hallway? I stepped aside, suddenly self-conscious about my mismatched furniture and concrete floors. Clara Thompson had never visited anywhere that wasn't at least upper middle class in her life. She settled onto my futon with surprising ease, removed her gloves, and fixed me with her penetrating gaze. You look thin. I've been busy, I said defensively. Too busy to call your grandmother after learning about the trust one established for you? Heat rushed to my face. I thought you might be angry about the legal challenge, or that Dad might intercept any calls to your house. Which is why God invented cellular telephones and private email accounts, she said dryly. I've had both for years, though your father believes I'm technologically incompetent. She opened her handbag and withdrew a sleek smartphone. My number and email. Program them into your phone immediately. As I complied, she continued, I've been quietly monitoring the situation since that ridiculous birthday stunt your parents pulled. It took time to arrange matters without arousing suspicion. You knew they kicked me out? Heather told me, though not immediately. Your sister is developing a conscience, albeit belatedly. Grandmother Clara sniffed. Your parents presented it as a mutual decision, you choosing your bohemian lifestyle over family responsibilities. I suspected otherwise. She rose, moving to the window where several of my recent works were displayed on a makeshift easel. These have improved considerably since your undergraduate portfolio. The composition is more confident. Coming from Grandmother Clara, this constituted effusive praise. Thank you, I said, throat tight with emotion. For the compliment and for the trust. I had no idea. Of course you didn't, she interrupted briskly. Your father would never have allowed you to know. Richard believes money should control, not liberate. She turned to face me. Brandon Sullivan informs me the hearing is scheduled for next month. I'll be testifying, of course. Is that wise? Dad will be furious. A smile, razor-thin and dangerous, crossed her lips. Darling, at my age, other people's fury is vastly entertaining, particularly when they've earned it. She moved toward the kitchenette, examining my modest accommodations with an appraising eye. You've created a functional life here, on your own terms, with minimal resources. That demonstrates character your parents claim you lack. Before leaving, she pressed an envelope into my hands. Early birthday present for next year, she said. Since this year's was so abominably handled. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a small key. Safe deposit box at First National, she explained. Contains family jewelry that belonged to my mother. It should have gone to you on your 21st birthday, but your father intervened. Another matter we'll address at the hearing. The visit lasted less than an hour, but shifted something fundamental in my universe. I wasn't alone. I wasn't forgotten. And justice, it seemed, was approaching swiftly. The county courthouse loomed imposingly against the October sky, its limestone facade glowing amber in the morning light. I stood on the steps, clutching my portfolio case, not because it contained anything relevant to the proceedings, but because its familiar weight grounded me. Ready? Brandon asked, his formal Navy suit a stark contrast to the business-casual attire I'd grown accustomed to seeing him wear during our preparation meetings. I nodded, unable to form words. Today would determine not just my financial future but whether my parents would face consequences for their deception. The previous week had been a whirlwind of last-minute depositions and document submissions. Brandon had warned me that my parents' legal team was pursuing aggressive tactics, including questioning my mental stability and financial responsibility. They're desperate, he explained, which makes them dangerous. Grandmother Clara arrived in a town car, accompanied by her own attorney. Theodore Harrington himself, silver-haired and intimidating in his bespoke suit. Vanessa, he greeted me formally. Your grandmother speaks highly of your resilience. Inside, the courtroom's polished wooden benches and hushed atmosphere heightened my anxiety. Brandon directed me to our table, arranging legal pads and documents with practiced efficiency. Across the aisle, my parents' attorneys, 3 of them, whispered urgently among themselves. Then the side door opened, and my parents entered. 7 months had passed since my birthday expulsion. Mom looked thinner, worry lines etched more deeply around her mouth. Dad's confident stride seemed slightly diminished, his shoulders hunched beneath his expensive suit. Behind them walked Heather, her expression unreadable. Our eyes met briefly before they took their seats. No recognition flickered in their faces, as if I were merely another legal obstacle rather than their daughter. Judge Patricia Okonkwo entered, a formidable woman with close-cropped gray hair and penetrating eyes. After preliminaries, she fixed her gaze on the assembled attorneys. Let's be clear. This case involves alleged financial impropriety within a family trust. I have zero patience for emotional manipulation or character assassination. Stick to relevant facts. Brandon presented our case first, methodically outlining the trust's establishment, its explicit designation for my artistic education and career, and my parents' deliberate concealment of its existence. He detailed the birthday eviction and coerced signature with clinical precision that somehow made the events sound even more heartless. Miss Thompson was not only denied access to funds specifically designated for her education, forcing her to incur substantial student loan debt unnecessarily, but was then deliberately misled about the nature of documents she was signing under duress, he concluded. My parents' lead attorney, Martin Goldstein, presented their counterarguments with smooth confidence. The Thompson parents made difficult decisions to protect family assets from impulsive misuse. Their daughter demonstrated persistent financial irresponsibility and rejection of guidance. The signature was obtained during an emotional but necessary family discussion about adult independence. When my turn came to testify, I approached the witness stand on wooden legs. Under Brandon's careful questioning, I recounted my birthday eviction, the subsequent homelessness, and my gradual rebuilding of life and career. Goldstein's cross-examination was brutal. Isn't it true you repeatedly rejected your parents' career advice despite their financial industry expertise? I chose to pursue my passion and talents, I answered carefully. A passion that left you unable to support yourself without this trust money? I was supporting myself before learning about the trust, I countered. Working multiple jobs while building my client base. Yet here you are, pursuing litigation instead of reconciliation. Doesn't that suggest your primary interest is financial? Brandon objected, and Judge Okonkwo sustained with a warning glance at Goldstein. The most startling testimony came from an unexpected source. When Heather was called as a witness for my parents, she approached the stand with visible trepidation. After being sworn in, she glanced at our parents, then at me, then down at her hands. Miss Thompson, Goldstein began smoothly, can you describe your sister's attitude toward financial responsibility during your upbringing? Heather looked up, her expression suddenly resolute. Actually, Vanessa was always more financially responsible than me. She worked part-time jobs throughout college while I relied on allowance. She tracked expenses in spreadsheets while I maxed out credit cards. Goldstein blinked, clearly thrown. That contradicts your previous statement. I know what I said before, Heather interrupted. I was trying to protect myself from what happened to Vanessa. I was afraid. Afraid of what, exactly? Of being the next one kicked out, she said quietly. Our parents' approval has always been conditional on compliance. From the gallery, I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath. Furthermore, Heather continued, gaining confidence, I was present when they planned the birthday eviction. It was deliberately timed for maximum emotional impact. They discussed the trust document for weeks beforehand, strategizing how to get Vanessa to sign without understanding what it was. Your Honor, Goldstein sputtered, I request a brief recess to confer with my clients. Denied, Judge Okonkwo said sharply. The witness will continue. For 15 astonishing minutes, Heather detailed years of manipulation and favoritism, culminating in the calculated plan to divert my inheritance. After Vanessa signed the renunciation, Dad said we could redirect the trust funds to my business school tuition and eventual startup capital, she admitted. He called it rebalancing family resources toward productive investments. When Brandon cross-examined her, he asked simply, why are you testifying against your parents' interests today? Heather looked directly at me. Because watching what they did to Vanessa made me realize they'd do the same to me the moment I deviated from their plan. That's not love. That's control. My grandmother's testimony delivered the final blow. With Theodore Harrington guiding her questions, she revealed that my parents had systematically mismanaged family business interests for years, using her investments to cover shortfalls while projecting prosperity. When I established Vanessa's trust with independent trustees, Richard was furious, she explained. It represented funds he couldn't access or control. The birthday incident occurred 3 days after I informed him I was restructuring my will to include direct oversight of all inherited assets. By mid-afternoon, Judge Okonkwo had heard enough. She invalidated my renunciation, removed my parents as secondary trustees, and ordered an immediate forensic accounting of all family business entities involving my grandmother's investments. Additionally, she granted full back payment of educational expenses with interest. Miss Thompson, she addressed me directly. The court finds clear evidence that your signature was obtained through deliberate misrepresentation under duress. The full balance of the Clara Thompson Educational and Artistic Development Trust, approximately $1.2 million with accumulated interest, is confirmed as rightfully yours. The figure stunned me. All those years of scrimping, sacrificing, and struggling, while funds specifically designated for me sat untouched. Outside the courthouse, reporters from local business publications clustered around. The Thompson family's prominence in financial circles had made our case noteworthy. My father pushed through the crowd, face tight with suppressed rage, my mother trailing behind with reddened eyes. You've destroyed this family, he hissed as he passed me.
No, that, y replica calmly.
You did that on my birthday. Grandmother Clara approached, linking her arm through mine. The Mercedes is waiting, dear. I believe celebration is in order. As we descended the courthouse steps, Heather broke away from our parents, rushing toward us. Vanessa, wait. I tensed, but her expression held no animosity. I'm sorry, she said simply. For everything. For watching it happen. For benefiting from your exile. It's complicated, I acknowledged. We were both playing roles in their dysfunction. Can we talk sometime? Maybe coffee? Her vulnerability. So, unlike the confident sister who had smirked from my bedroom doorway 7 months earlier, touched something in me. I'll think about it, I promised, neither refusing nor committing. That evening, Grandmother Clara hosted a small dinner at her penthouse apartment. Just me, Brandon, whose professional relationship had gradually warmed into something potentially more personal, Kyle, and Madison, who had supported me from the first day of homelessness. To Justice, Clara toasted, raising her crystal champagne flute. And to Vanessa's magnificent second act. Later, as we stood on her balcony overlooking the city lights, she placed a weathered hand over mine. Your grandfather would be proud. Not of the money, he never cared much for that, but of your determination to live authentically. I still can't believe the trust amount, I admitted. It's overwhelming. Consider it 23 years of birthday and Christmas gifts, delivered all at once, she said pragmatically. The question now is what you'll build with it. Below us, the city sprawled in all directions, the same city where I'd been homeless just months before. Somewhere down there was my tiny studio apartment with its mismatched furniture and industrial windows. Somewhere were the Denny's where I'd waitressed, the motel where I'd first slept after being kicked out, the law office where I'd learned about my inheritance. The signature that was supposed to strip me of everything had instead returned to me more than I'd ever imagined possible, not just financially, but in self-knowledge, true connections, and the freedom to chart my own course without fear or obligation. 1 year after being kicked out on my 23rd birthday, I stood before a different kind of audience, not family members wielding rejection, but a crowd gathered for the grand opening of Nouveau Horizons, my new gallery showcasing emerging artists. The converted warehouse space downtown featured high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and state-of-the-art lighting systems. The front section operated as a commercial gallery, while the back housed 5 subsidized studio spaces for artists transitioning from education to professional practice, the very support system I had lacked. This gallery represents more than commercial space, I explained to the assembled guests during my opening remarks. It's the physical manifestation of the Clara Thompson New Voices Scholarship Foundation, which provides financial support, mentorship, and exhibition opportunities to artists facing extraordinary obstacles. From the front row, Grandmother Clara nodded approvingly, elegant as always in her tailored suit. Beside her sat Brandon, who had transitioned from my attorney to trusted advisor to something more personal over the past months. Our relationship had evolved gradually, beginning with coffee meetings that extended beyond legal matters into conversations about art, literature, and eventually, our personal histories. Professional ethics prevented me from asking you to dinner until your case concluded, he had admitted during our first official date. It was the longest 3 months of my career. The foundation, named in my grandmother's honor, dedicated 30% of my trust fund to supporting artists from disadvantaged backgrounds, with special consideration for those who, like me, had experienced family rejection. The selection committee included established artists, educators, and social workers specializing in family trauma. The transformation of my life extended beyond professional achievements. The tiny studio apartment with its makeshift furniture had been replaced by a comfortable loft in the same building, purchased outright rather than rented, with space for both living and creating. Carlos had been promoted to building manager with my recommendation, and his daughter Isabella now worked as my gallery assistant. My relationship with Heather evolved tentatively from that first hesitant coffee meeting into monthly dinners, where we gradually rebuilt a sisterhood independent of our parents' influence. She had transferred from business school to psychology, inspired partly by our family dysfunction. I realized I was studying business to please Dad, not because I had any passion for it, she explained during one of our dinners. Watching you stay true to your art despite everything made me question my own choices. My parents remained distant, their attempts at reconciliation transparently motivated by financial concerns rather than genuine remorse. The forensic accounting ordered by Judge Okonkwo had revealed significant irregularities in their management of family investments, resulting in professional sanctions for my father and the dissolution of several business partnerships. They send birthday cards now, I told Dr. Wong during one of our continuing therapy sessions. Generic Hallmark sentiments with gift cards tucked inside. No acknowledgement of what happened, just awkward attempts at normalizing. How does that make you feel? She asked. Validated, strangely enough. Their inability to acknowledge wrongdoing confirms I'm not crazy for feeling injured. And the gift cards? I donate them to the youth shelter downtown. Seems fitting. The most meaningful celebration of my 24th birthday occurred not with family, but with chosen family. Brandon, Kyle, Madison, Olivia from Brushstrokes Gallery, Carlos and his wife Rosa, and grandmother Clara, who had relocated to a luxury apartment 3 blocks from mine. To think, Madison said as we shared cake in my loft, last year at this time you were sleeping on my futon and applying for waitressing jobs. While hiding my art supplies in your closet, I added, laughing. Brandon raised his glass. To signatures that change everything. To signatures, I agreed, and the documents worth signing. 2 such documents lay on my desk upstairs, the mortgage for the gallery building and the incorporation papers for the foundation. A third waited in Brandon's pocket, though I wouldn't discover the small velvet box and its implied lifetime commitment until later that evening. My parents' signature demand on my 23rd birthday had been intended to sever me from family support and resources. Instead, it had ultimately connected me to greater resources, both financial and emotional, than I had ever imagined possible. The signature they forced upon me became the catalyst for freedom rather than the instrument of control they intended. As autumn leaves drifted past the gallery windows that evening, I found myself reflecting on the year's journey from rejection to reinvention. The path hadn't been linear. There had been setbacks, moments of debilitating doubt, financial missteps as I learned to manage significant assets, nights when old nightmares returned. But unlike the frightened young woman who drove away from her childhood home with everything she owned crammed into a compact car, I now understood that family isn't defined by DNA, but by who remains when the darkest moments come. True family celebrates your authentic self rather than demanding manufactured conformity. That signature, the one I was forced to scribble through tears on my birthday, hadn't taken everything from me after all. It had cleared the path for me to build something authentic, purposeful, and entirely my own. I'd like to know what you would have done in my situation. Would you have fought for your inheritance or walked away completely? Have you ever had to rebuild your life after a major betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and transformation. And remember, sometimes what looks like an ending is actually the signature on a brand new beginning. Thank you for listening to my story today.